Okay, so there's a lot of people who are talking about NFTs these days, and I want to share a very different perspective. And I want to share it with what you're seeing today, which is basically scenes that are from a Netflix series known as Arcane. And I think that Arcane is quite relevant to my thoughts on what an NFT is and why this is very interesting for businesses. I think that a lot of it is focused on like let's start with I'll cover a few things. I want to cover like what is an NFT, and then I'm going to cover a little bit of where I see it heading in the future, as opposed to just focusing on like NFTs and the hype. Like we have to talk about the hype side, but I think that there's some other aspects that I want to cover as well. So, if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Dr. Ed, and you're watching AI Parenting. I'm just a geek dad who's obsessed about the future for our children. And given that there is so much talk about NFTs, there's so much talk about, using non-fungible tokens, and buying them and cryptocurrency and all of these things, I thought it was appropriate for us to have a little bit of a discussion about it because I feel that what is lost in most of the discussion about NFTs is our humanity. And it is that humanity aspect that I want to talk about the most. Now, let's start off with a non-fungible token. So NFT is short term for non-fungible token, and it's like the most impossible. I've seen people try to explain this in video, and it is absolutely hilarious. So I want to show you what that looks like. Explaining NFTs to a friend. Uh, let's see, explaining NFTs. And I found that like these videos are quite hilarious, when it comes to what things are. Um, you know what? Rather than do that, maybe I'll just use Johnny Harris's initial explanation to begin with, which is too long. Need something shorter. Oh, here we go. No, I don't like that one. I watched that one. Okay, let's use this one.
I needed an online store for my jewelry design business, so Shop Here, powered by Google, built me one for free. This isn't just for jewelry.
This is Nyan Cat. He's part cat, part Pop-Tart. The gif of a rainbow casting feline was a viral meme back in 2011. Fast forward to February 2021, the original gif was sold at an online auction for 300 Ether, the cryptocurrency that powers the Ethereum network. That was equivalent to nearly $600,000 at the time. You may be asking how someone can own the original copy of a GIF that was pervasive around the internet. It's because it was sold as an NFT, or non-fungible token, which acts like a digital certificate of authenticity. The market for NFTs ballooned in 2020, climbing to a market cap of at least $338 million from about $41 million in 2018. But skeptics are asking whether these assets are really worth the value assigned to them, especially if all it takes to view them is an internet connection.
Okay, that's probably sufficient for now. So essentially, you can see like NFT stands for non-fungible token. And it's kind of weird, like how could somebody own the original like Nyan Cat GIF? How is that possible that they have the authentic version and that it sold for 300 Ether, which is probably like times 2,000? That's probably around $60,000. Like how could it sell for? Oh, how much is 300? Let me find out in US dollar. Like I want to find out how much. So each Ether is worth $3,000. So 300 times 3,000. So that's about $900,000. So close to $1 million is how much that GIF cost. And it's like a free GIF. You can go and download it for free off the internet. And what cryptocurrency does is it like crypto and a lot of these like non-fungible tokens, what they do is they allow somebody to have something that is unique, that is there's only one copy of. There, it's kind of like the badge, and you can kind of think of it like on Twitter, you can have like this badge that shows that you are verified. It's kind of similar to that. People will sometimes put their badge, their authentic NFT, onto their Twitter handles, and then you'll see like a hexagon type of shape. And that just shows that they are the owner of that particular NFT. And you could mint your own. You could go and create your own NFT that is exclusive. But the whole point of it is in an internet where computers can make like perfect copies of things, it is able to create something that cannot be copied, is not copyable. Um, that is, at least there is a that like it's kind of like a certificate, right? So it's like a certificate of authenticity on the internet. And this is changing. It's changing a lot of the perspectives of what people value and what like value looks like on the internet. And one of the reasons I want to talk about uh, this is it's a really slippery slope, right? Because we know that cryptocurrencies, for those who aren't familiar, uh, things like Ethereum or Bitcoin consume an incredible amount of power. Just running Bitcoin consumes more power than some countries. And I think that this is something that is important to understand is that like this is done specifically to benefit certain individuals, generally those with the most income, right? So it helps the rich get richer. And it's kind of a way that you can accumulate a type of wealth uh, that has sometimes been used outside of legal tender, like outside of the economic system. And so one of the examples of this was, and I need to talk about this. Um, I think I talked about this a little bit when I covered the metaverse, so I don't need to cover too much of it right now. Um, but essentially, the no, that's not the one. Yes. So essentially, the I believe it was called the. Um, hold on, before I make that statement, let me double check. So this was called. Oh yes. Okay, here it is. So essentially, we had a cryptocurrency um, used. Yes. So uh, it's the anonymity that is provided through cryptocurrencies that makes it the most attractive. And I think that that's one of the things that is being used. Like if you even look at like the trucker convoy, um, you're seeing like give send go. The information is being leaked. People are becoming more aware of the risks of having information get out there. Like, for example, there are people who donated $20 to the trucker convoy on Give Send Go, and because they didn't properly secure their information, it was readily accessible to hackers. They didn't even have to do much in order to get access to all that information. Now that $20 donation has turned into your bank account is frozen, your insurance is now canceled. And that has major, major implications for individuals all across our society and what it means for contributing to these things. So cryptocurrencies is commonly used because there's this anonymity to it. You can mask things like an IP address, but you have to be pretty tech savvy in order to do it. Now, when I talk back to the notion of NFTs, I'm thinking about none of those. I'm thinking about NFTs connected to art specifically. There are other ways of doing it. Like people are considering like NFTs related to like a tweet, or they're considering it related to they're describing it as like the um, like in the metaverse, there's this notion of your digital assets become more valuable than your physical assets, and that's certainly the case for some of the people who own the board monkey yacht club, um, board monkey yacht club. Yeah, here it is. And so what is that Bored Ape Yacht Club? BASI, essentially, like it's just an exclusion. If you have something like a Bored Ape Yacht Club and you enter, it's an NFT collection. You can see like there's like they look like these ones over here. I don't know if you can see that one. So that's an example. There's lots, you can buy them, right? Like they're like things that you can buy, and you're the one who has exclusive access to that one. And then there's all sorts of like fun things that go with it. And it was super early, actually, Bored Ape Yacht Club. And so it's one of the reasons why like this is often the term that is associated with uh, NFTs, and they're super expensive, right? So you could spend tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So on the internet, it's the equivalent of like the Rolex watch for a lot of people. So, oh, I've got this really fancy, watch. I want to show it to other people, like how well I'm doing. That is what people are using. They're using Bored Ape NFTs in order to show off their wealth. And so it is something that is important for us to consider. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so that's great. Like we know about NFTs, but what about this stuff? Like what about Arcane? Like what the heck does this have to do with this Netflix series? So what is Arcane originates from essentially a video game. And I think to me this is really interesting because I talked about like the metaverse as the moment when your digital assets become more valuable than your physical assets. And this is exactly a case of it, and it is about like a kind of a creative asset that you want to own and control. And of course it still has to be done through the legal system, cannot just be done through NFTs, but it can be extremely valuable in a number of areas. And I think that if you look at what has happened with this particular property from Riot Games, I think that it gives you an indication of the potential of NFTs. Now, they're not doing it through NFTs, but I see it as it's a digital asset. It's a digital asset that they're reusing in many different ways. And I think that to me is the most interesting part. And so let's talk about the game first. So the game is League of Legends. And if you look at it, how can I best explain this? So essentially, it's just like a video game, and just watching it is, I don't know, like to me, I don't know, it's nothing significant, but for some people, it's like it was a game that people played, and they built this backstory around the game. And so, like if you look at the game, it's like a kind of war. Oh, like it's like a Warcraft style, type of game. Um, at least that's how I see it, right? It's a real time strategy game. A bunch of people or players are playing together, and they're trying to figure out how to defeat and go to the enemy base. Seems kind of boring, but when you actually look at the stories that were created, and the properties that were created, every single one of the characters has a backstory. Every single one of the characters can be part of a music video. And so what they've done is they created a K-pop band, they created a rap band, they created other assets from the same characters. And so this is an example of that. And so maybe I'll just share like a brief moment of it. I don't want to have too much sound in here, but let's go.
You wanna dose of this right now it's KD I'm a goddess with a blaze 소리처럼 나 이름 믿지 못하게 loud 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 I could take you to the top 절대 멈추지 못해 내가 끝내주는 bad gal 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 When I start to talk that Oh you know how to react I'm a picture perfect face with the water in my veins You can hear it in my growl 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 So keep your eyes on me now 무엇을 보든 좋아할 거야 다 할 수 없는 래퍼 나와 되길 원한 늘 확신해 We got it all in our hands now So can you handle what we're all about What's your tough? Let's get it, show you out Can you feel the rush now? Ain't nobody bringing us down, 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 down They could try but we gonna wear the crown You could go another round, round, round
Okay, so I'm going to pause there. Essentially, that created it's a huge hit on YouTube. You've probably seen it multiple times. They used professional K-pop artists in order to animate this, to create the characters, to create the life around it. And the video itself has about 500 million or half a billion views. And so something like that obviously is a lot of money, even in terms of like ad revenue for a company like Riot Games. So this is changing the bottom line for companies, and that's why I specifically talk about this property because they just keep making hits. They just keep making things out of it. They have a character on Twitter, and they just took one of the characters. So all those characters that you saw, they're all characters in a video game, but they attach a humanity to it. Right? They attached oh, we're trying to be stars too. And what was interesting about it was it is these, of course, characters in a fantasy scene, but they tried to animate the backgrounds to be more realistic. So they're like driving a car or they're at a car wash or something. So there's like an element of realism to them. And I think that is pretty interesting. I want to also talk about Seraphine. So one of the characters, they just took one of the characters and all they did is they created a Twitter account for that character. And they have more followers than most of the people that I know. And if you look, this is just the Twitter account for Seraphine, who is just one of the characters inside the video game. And they drew some pictures. They try to put her into realistic scenarios. So this is behind a real background. And that's all it is. It's just this asset being used over and over and over again, drawn in different ways. Oh, I'm just in bed. But it's just kind of a fun way of exposing and creating a brand. And that's what these are. So think of an NFT like a brand, right? Or something that improves your brand. And these people are able to use it over and over again. And if each character itself is a brand in itself, then you have all of these assets that you can use over and over and over again. And so anybody could copy your character, but that only helps your brand, right? So you could say people could go and take AI parenting, say the logo, they can use it anytime, but then it just helps my brand. It just points more towards us. Just like anybody could take it, slap an Apple logo onto any particular product. It just helps Apple. I mean, why do they throw in stickers into every Apple product that you buy? It's because people are going to slap that that logo onto things. And so it is a brand in itself. And as this brand, for example, the Bored Ape Yacht Club increases in value, then your asset increases, your brand increases when you have that asset. And so it's the same as the Rolex is a brand that helps elevate other brands as well. And so think of NFTs like a brand is the way that I would recommend. Now, I want to dive in a little bit more to the humanity, and I want to talk about Arcane. To me, I've seen a lot of animations, but definitely for 2021, this particular series was the most impactful. And the reason I described it as impactful was because it was through watching videos of it, like other people's breakdowns, that like I learned how to be a better parent, through a video game. I don't know how many video games I can describe which helped me become a better parent, but this was definitely one of them. And that kind of blows my mind, is that sometimes a digital asset can teach us more about our own humanity than than a actual live action movie. And to explain what I mean, I'm going to have to go and show me an example of that. And sh- so, first, I'm going to introduce this concept of duality in Arcane, foils that they have, and then I'm going to move a little bit further into what this means for parenting. So, bear with me. Here we go. I'm going to start loading this guy up. Yes, of course. Okay. So let's see at 1. So we're gonna do a little bit of an intro at 1. I hope this is the right one. Let's try that. Okay, here we go. Where's the sound?
Is creatively valuable for adults, or why it's an essential style of filmmaking. Luckily, 2021 still had something else in store, though. Arcane appeared out of nowhere for me. I've never played League of Legends or followed the tremendous fan base that supports the game's community. But as soon as Arcane was released, it was impossible to avoid the universal acclaim and hype surrounding the show. While some may have predicted the commercial success, few could have ever imagined the critical acclaim that Arcane would go on to garner. The show debuted at number 1 in 52 countries and peaked at number 2 in the US, while boasting the highest ever rating for an original show in Netflix's history on IMDb. Despite these absurd numbers, though, I went into Arcane with tempered expectations.
Okay, so really, like it kind of shows you the acclaim that this was able to make, just from the show itself. But a little bit about, like, well, why? Like, what caused that acclaim? And to me, it is that duality that really gets to the heart of it. And to understand that, you really have to understand some of the creators of it. And so that is my goal. Is I'll share with you some details of the creators, and I think that that's the part that to me is the most interesting. So let's see, 330. Okay, perfect. That's exactly what I want. Here we go.
But luckily here, we do not have to guess about the theme because the writers for the show, Alex Yee and Christian Link, have detailed it for us.
At its core, Arcane is really just a story of duality, right? Of these two halves of the city and these many different character pairings where they're bound together either by principle or by family or tradition, and then like they find that those elements get sort of like opposed against each other, right?
Arcane's theme is centered on duality, but what about its tone, the personality in which?
Well, I'm not going to dive into tone. Duality is key, and the way that this is done is through the notion of foils. And I'm going to try to explain. I'm going to get the author of this to explain narrative foil to you, because
with another
he'll
character.
explain it way better.
Typically,
than I will.
foils are used.
So here we go.
Co-writer
And
for Arcane
there's
has
two creators,
Over 6
Alex Yee
hours.
and Christian Bale. And the reason I think duality is important, it's important for me as a Canadian-born Chinese individual, because I live in this world of duality all the time. I am neither directly inside the Chinese community, because I wasn't born in Hong Kong or in China, and I'm never really a part of like the Canadian society either. simply because I don't look like everyone else. I'm usually an outsider. And like my entire educational experience has been that of an outsider. And so understanding duality um, to me is a very like Canadian born Chinese experience. So it's something to consider. And Christian Link, I think, describes a little bit about how they employ foils. So why don't we take a look at that now?
So you're just gonna keep watching them. You start asking a lot of different questions, around what's their daily life like, like where do they sleep, what do they eat, like how do they kind of go about their day, and that was something we never really explored. So I think it was that, like adding these layers that actually that are necessary to even really entertain real drama and real,
about duality in his
elements and moments.
So considering that Arcane is thematically about duality and is tonally dark, we can start to look at the primary narrative techniques used to build upon this basis. Arcane as a show is built upon foils. Now, this may sound familiar from 10th grade English class, or perhaps might even evoke rapping material, but just as a recap, what we are talking about today are narrative foils. That being a character that has contrasting traits with another character. Typically, foils are used as villains, meant to accentuate the virtues and strengths of the hero. Arguably, the most famous foil pairing is Joker to the Batman, but there are plenty of others such as Magneto to Professor X and Yoda to Palpatine. But in Arcane, foils are not just the villains. Foils are everywhere, and you start to notice them when you compare some of these characters to each other. Some contrasts are easy, such as Silco being a foil to Vander. Vander was a pragmatic altruist, where Silco was a ruthless idealist. Professor Heimerdinger is a foil to the scientist Singed. Both are intellectual giants assisting the core characters, but where Heimerdinger is tempered and very much restrained with his vision of advancement, Singed is willing to do absolutely whatever it takes to see his experiments bear fruit and doesn't care about the consequences. A more subtle foil would be Jace in Victor. Jace was the son of a noble family from Piltover. He was rich, famous, influential, and muscle-bound. Victor, in contrast, was a poor boy from the Undercity. He was overlooked, quiet, and deathly ill. By pairing these two character types together, their growth and development becomes more pronounced because we are continuously seeing the opposite side of the coin.
So a lot of this duality, is based on those characters, who they are, and how the people you think are the good guys aren't necessarily the good guys. The people who are the bad guys aren't necessarily the bad guys. They're just doing what they can to survive. And they use this theme of family a lot. And this notion of family is very important because it talks about how like people are just doing the right thing that they think will help their family the most. And to me, it was there was a therapist who actually wrote about this that I found just fascinating. And I think it's worth a little bit of a visit just to see hers. And then I can link to all of
Students
these
with ADHD
in
save
the
10
in the
hours.
description as well. And so I like that the approach to think of it as like a parent's relationship with a child is very important to this theme. And so let me get into that. Here, right here. Okay. And here we go. And I'll switch.
Selves. And that's who Vi is to Powder, the one person that matters the most to her.
I need you to sit this one out, Powder. It's too dangerous.
But families stick together, you said it yourself.
I know what I said.
I want to fight, I can help.
You're not ready.
You can feel that Vi's anxiety starts to get the better of her, and she becomes reactive. She says something without thinking. You're not ready. Unfortunately, that's the exact opposite than what she's been trying to get her to feel comfortable and strong and ready. Sometimes when we're really frustrated or upset or stressed, our brains chemically shut down our working part of our memory, making us more narrow-minded and more reactive. We're not thinking about consequences to our actions. And that's what happens to Vi when she kind of just throws out this comment.
You're all I have left. I can't lose you.
She right away recognizes that she said something too harsh and she shouldn't have, and immediately softens.
Take this and run. Wherever you are, light it up and I'll find you. I promise.
Light this up and I will find you. But I don't think that she understands how strong Powder's abandonment issues are, how everyone else has died and left her and she doesn't want to be stuck there alone. Without anything to do, her brain's gonna spin. I wish that Vi had given her a job, something to do that she could have kept safe, but she could have felt like she was doing something important to be able to help the team so that she also was a contributing member.
So from something like this, it's like this is a video game. I want to be clear. And what she's talking about is this notion of children and adults deal with trauma in different ways. Some need to be away. They need to have that time to reflect. And others need to connect with other people when they experience trauma. And sometimes when we don't get what we need, that's where things get really fall downhill. And there's a character in there. She is originally called Powder. She eventually kind of is a bit bipolar and then turns into another character known as Jinx. And it was this notion of the words that you use for your children fundamentally impact their identity. It forms who they are, who they are consider themselves to be. And of course, kids are always watching. However, and this is really important, they are recording more during the worst of times. And I can connect a lot with Vi. I can understand that it is hard to think straight when you're under a lot of stress, when you're under trauma, when you're running in the middle of this. And being able to get out of the situation or maybe think about it or talk about it, it varies per person. And so it's not a perfect response. And a lot of parenting is not perfect. And so it's to me, this is insanity, right? Like this is a video game teaching us how to be more human. And to me, that is really what a NFT is about. This is really about, can we have something that explains a little bit more of our humanity beyond just, oh, it's a thing that shows how rich I am. That doesn't really explain our humanity. What is the NFT? And I've seen this. I've seen really good examples of NFTs that explain our humanity. And it explains that we really care about certain individuals. And so I looked up women. So there are a number of women that have started to create their own NFTs. And this is like a form of, it could be empowerment, it could be, it's just like a different style of things depending on what people prefer. And I love it. I think that this is a great way to go. I'll just show a few of them. There's an article here. Let me just pull this up. Rather than talk about it, let's talk. So 8 women only NFTs collections, and so these are some examples of some collections created by women. So this one has high-profile backers, Carrie Vaynerchuk and Reese Witherspoon, Sad Girls Bar. So it's like an emotional state that they're trying to share. Crypto Chick. And so this one's probably a financial one. This one's Fatales collection. And so you can see a number of different collections. And so what does it mean to have one of those, right? What does it mean to have people of color as your NFT? it can say a lot about you. And so people are choosing these similar to how they're choosing clothes or how they're like to represent them, or they're choosing like hats, like to represent their brand. It's just one of those tools that people use online in order to augment or to define or to make it more clear what their brand is about. And so I hope that that makes a little bit of sense and it explains a little bit why I'm so excited about this particular platform. Of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free. You can put them in the chat. I should have mentioned that before. But if you're wondering about anything, absolutely, this is probably something you want to look into more. I would, if you haven't seen the series Arcane, like please check it out. Like it is amazing. So it's Arcane on Netflix. I think that this is, to me, I'm trying to show it to a lot of people because I feel like it's the closest thing that I think of when I think of a like what an NFT could be, not what it is today. And I think the real thing that you have to look at is long term. What does this really mean? Does it tell the world that you're just a wealthy person? Is that your story that you want to associate with yourself and your brand? Or is it something else? Is it about how you're helping people? Is it about like what does the NFT stand for? It's the same as buying any product. What does owning it actually mean? And it has to be more than just self-centered. We're just helping ourselves. And I think that when you start to see that it's about these struggles, it's about talking about like maybe even the difficulty of relationship, this duality that many of us experience, then I feel like we're starting to get towards the humanity that exists within NFTs. And to me, it's never been about technology. It has always been about how technology is connected to our humanity. And more, I see that, oh, it's just this money thing. We're missing the point. Like there are people behind all of these things and they value certain things. And yeah, we want to make it easy for people to know what does your brand stand for. But ultimately, it's you. You are the long-term investment. And so how are you building up that brand? And it doesn't have to be NFTs. People can copy the image, right? But they can't copy you. And it is that level of authenticity that I see, that level of humanity that is at the core of what makes an NFT valuable long term. And so invest in those core morals, those core values, those core principles, and you can't go wrong long term. Then you're not just investing in the hype. You're investing in humanity. You're investing in other people. You're investing in the reality of our situation. And with that, I do need to get going. I appreciate everyone who was able to join. If you want to learn a little bit more, I'd encourage you go check out my site, aiparenting.live. I mentioned that I'm just a geek dad who's obsessed about the future. And so if you found this video useful, just hit a like, hit subscribe, write a comment, say, hey, thank you so much. I found this particular aspect to be most useful. And I mentioned a few books in my Amazon live stream. Non-NFTs for beginners is kind of like a way to get started learning about it. Metaverse investing, I've seen other people refer to this. It's like, to me, it's too hypey. There's another one called the NFT Handbook, which is a little bit more comprehensive. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this notion of like therapy, coaching, I feel that that's a really good area that you can help a lot of people in. And so Coaching Skills was a fantastic book. It talks about many of the therapist type of reactions that you saw earlier today. There was From Therapist to Coach is another great book that explains this kind of notion of how more and more people are looking for coaching, but in very specific areas. And that's something that I'm trying to grow in. I've been helping a few companies with their coaching. In fact, like just yesterday, I was coaching somebody who wanted to create their own educational site, let's call it like a technical university. And my recommendation for him was, don't just make a technical university. I mean, because you have strong competition from the likes of Coursera, Udacity. Go and brand you. Spend your effort branding yourself, because that's the thing that lasts long term. And it also separates you from every other thing out there, every other company. Like, nobody has your experience, nobody can copy you. And I think that that's the key thing, is that the more you dive into yourself and your own personality, the more that you have the NFT without needing an NFT. I'm Dr. Ed. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe. I really appreciate you visiting, and check out the site, aiparenting.live. Thank you.